Hello and welcome to today's webinar, The Basics of Peridata.net. We're pleased today to have three very qualified speakers, Jordy Sweet, Peridata.net Analyst and Support from Ancilla Partners Incorporated in Milwaukee, Lisa Locken, a Clinical Nurse Specialist at the Wheaton Franciscan Healthcare System St. Joseph and Chair of the WAPC Perinatal Data Committee, and Alan Cooper, a Partner at Ancilla Partners in Milwaukee. The objective of this presentation is to demonstrate how to use the Peridata.net system for entering birth records and for retrieving site-specific data reports. At this time, I will turn the microphone over to Jordy Sweet.
Hi, I'm Jordy Sweet. I'm sure I've talked to some of you before through Peridata.net support. I'm the support person. So what I wanted to start out with is forgetting your password and changing your password. So oftentimes if you forget your password, there is actually on the login screen a link that you can click for Forgot Your Password. And that will bring you to a box where you'll type your username or email address, and they will send a link to your email. And when you click that link, it will bring you to a page where you can choose a new password. And then on the next screen, okay, so similar to the screen you would get if you're a new user and you've got a new account and you're setting up your password, or if you're changing your password after you forgot your password. This is the screen that you'll see. It gives you instructions on what your password needs to be, and those are important because when you enter your password, you have to make sure that you're entering it exactly as you've chosen it. The field is case sensitive, so if you enter any lowercase letters instead of uppercase, it will give you an error. So just pay attention to those. It needs to be 6 characters long, no longer than 16, containing numbers. And you can also access this from the help desk, which I'll show you when I go to my main screen. So if you want to put it over to my screen, can you do that, Kyle?
Yes.
Okay. Can everyone see this login screen? Peridata.net. So right here is the link that I was mentioning before from Forgot Your Password. But when you enter your username and password here, click Login. And it'll bring you to this screen here. Now, I have a lot of hospitals listed, but usually you'll have access to just your one main site or maybe a few sites within your system. So you'll begin by selecting which site you'd like to enter, and it'll bring you to this main Peridata.net homepage. And on this homepage, there are 3 main sections. There's this main content section, which gives you information on the number of records that you may have entered in the last 30 days, how many are complete, incomplete, which I'll get into more later. And there's also this news section, where if anything's happening on the Peridata.net site, any changes, any maintenance that may be occurring, we'll post a message here, so it's important to check that area. There's also this area at the top, which allows you to log out, or if you have access to more than one hospital, you can switch. It'll bring you back to this screen. The Help button will bring you to the support page, and Home is this page here. So while you're working on the birth record, you can access this home page by clicking this button. So the main area of this page that we're going to focus on today is this left-hand navigation. And this gives you access to the birth records, which we'll talk about first, and then I'll mention this completion section, certification, the standard reports we'll go over last, as well as this help desk section. Since I have many of the roles available, some of you may not see this administration, attendance, users, etc. But everyone should have access to this birth records, which is what we'll start with. So under the birth records up here, there's some predetermined, some predefined searches. So those are the closed records, fetal deaths, recent births, the VR updates, and VR updates needing review. And what I mean by predefined is that when you click on those, it will just give you a list of the records that you have in your system for, like this one is for fetal deaths. So those are the records that we have for fetal deaths. And recent births are going to give you the births that have occurred within the last 2 months. Then perhaps the most important area of this section is the search. So anytime you are searching for a birth record, say you want to make sure that the birth record's in there, or you have began entering the birth record and want to finish it, you would click on this search button, and it'll bring you to the search birth record screen. Now, it has all of these fields to enter information that you may have on the birth record, but you certainly do not have to enter all of the information in these boxes. If you just have the medical record number or maybe the peridata.net ID, which I'll explain, or a CIVRS ID, you can enter any of that information and click search. If you just want to search all the records, just leave all of them blank and hit search as well. And this will bring you to the birth record results. So these are all of the birth records we have in our test system. And as you can see, it gives you these columns for the information. This is the relevant information to help you identify which birth record you'd want. Say you did a search and it didn't give you the information that you wanted, you could click Refine Search. It'll bring you back to this screen and you can enter more information to try and get to the birth record that you're looking for. So the next thing I want to talk about is creating a new birth record. So depending on how your hospital or site does it, sometimes you'll start with CIVRS, and sometimes you'll start by creating a birth record in peridata. So you always want to search first to make sure that your record's not already in there and you're not creating a duplicate record. And from this search page, you'll click Create New Birth Record. And that's the way that you create a new birth record. And the birth record screen is sort of similar to the home screen in that you have this top navigation, this main content area, and this left-hand navigation. So let's go back. Let's say you had already started a birth record and you found it in your search and you want to continue working on that birth record. What you do then is under Actions, you would click Edit, and that will bring you back to the same page as before when creating a new birth record. Or if you just wanted to view a birth record, you go back to that same page and under Actions hit View. And this will not let you edit any of the information. You're simply viewing what you've already entered. So going back to talk about the birth record, we'll use this new one that we created. And on the left-hand side, this is how you're going to move around the birth record. So you can see it has a title on each side, and that will bring you to screens. And each screen in the main content will have this header right here, which will tell you what screen you're on. And every screen will also contain the same header at the top that gives you the peridata.net ID, the mother's MRN, her name, date of birth, as you can see all this information up here. So that's so that on any screen you're on, you know which birth record you're looking at. Another important thing about the birth record that you should be aware of is on this left-hand sidebar, you can see these different boxes. And what these boxes mean, this is state and hospital required information. So these green boxes right here refer to the information on the birth record that's required by the state, and the blue boxes refer to the information required by the hospital. Some people will only see these green boxes because they're not participating in the checkpoint, but if you are, you'll see these blue boxes as well. Excuse me. So this is important. If the boxes are filled in, it means that all of the information that's required is complete on that page. But as you can see on the mother page, both of these boxes are hollow, which means that information is required. If you can see on this mother page, the fields that are in bold and have this square next to them mean that it's required by the state to fill in. And once you fill in those fields, the bold will go away. Once you've filled in all of those and save it, then that box will become filled. The hospital required fields, those have a little triangle by them. I'll show you one of those. So this would be a hospital required field with a triangle next to it. Another feature of the birth record is that you can click on the field names and it will give you information in a pop-up. So say you're working on a birth record and you're not sure if this applies maybe to the birth you're looking at. So you can click, you'll hover over and you'll see the question mark. You can click on that. Not all of them have information available, but for instance, this prolonged latent phase, it'll give you a definition of what that means, and a lot of them do have that definition. Another way you can get this information is from the data dictionary, which I'll go over later. And once you have completed the whole birth record, you can save it, or you can also log out, which will save your birth record information. So going back to the search page, there's another feature that I'd like to share with you regarding the birth records. From the search screen, you can also access the dashboard. And this dashboard contains information relevant to that specific birth record. There's a summary section, which is like the header that you saw on the birth record itself. There's this critical information section, which gives you the hospital and state status, any special circumstances, and when the record was created. And you can also see the changes that have occurred on the birth record, as well as those that have been made to the CIVRIS record. It will tell you the vital records updates. And then I'll show you one that has this. It also shows you who certified the record and when they certified it, as well as the CIVRIS birth ID. So this dashboard's really, it contains a lot of important information. And it also has this worksheet feature. So let's say you needed a hard copy of this information for your hospital records. If you clicked this worksheet, it will come up with this birth certificate worksheet with all of the information filled in for that specific record. And now that's if you access the worksheet from your dashboard. Another way you can access the worksheets is under Help Desk by clicking Worksheets. This will give you a list of the worksheets that are available, if you wanted all of the fields or maybe just only hospital-required fields. These will not be filled in, however. These are ones that are blank that you can fill in yourself as you're looking through the birth record. So the next section of peridata.net that I want to show you is completion. So under birth records, there's this completion section. And these will give you a list. As you can see, there's the hospital complete records or incomplete, and these state complete versus incomplete. So if you're looking for records that maybe you need to work on, this will give you a list. This is the hospital incomplete records. So these would be records that I'd need to go in and fill in those hospital required fields for. So if you're looking to finish the records from this point and you see that it's incomplete, you can click Edit. And then simply look at the blue boxes for the hospital. And any of these blue boxes that are still hollow, you would go to that page and fill in the required information. Here it needs the clinician's final estimate. And when you're done filling in that information, hit Save, and it will remove it from this hospital incomplete records list. Then for certification, this is simply a list of the certified records. And what I mean by certified is their state status is certified by Vital Records. So any records that are certified, it'll say that under the state status. It might also say modified certified, which would mean that the record was received from Vital Records, but changes have been made to it since it's been sent. State status might also say complete, which means that all of the state required fields are complete, but the record has not yet been certified by SIVRIS. And then lastly, for the help desk section, as I mentioned before, when changing your password, you can access changing your password from this Change Password link under the Help Desk. Also, if you click Help, it will bring you to our peridata.net support page where you can request help via a ticket. It also gives you information on how to email us or call us for help. And if you have any questions, you just want some more information on something, this knowledge-based section is a great tool. Most of what I was covering today in this webinar, you'll have information on, such as navigating the birth record. You can access that from here. But moving back to peridata.net, under the Help Desk section, you can also edit your user information. So this allows you to change your name or address, phone number, email address, and simply click Save for that. You can also access the data dictionary. So this is similar to on the birth record when I showed you how you can click on specific words for a definition. This data dictionary contains all of the definitions that we have for the birth record. So say you wanted to know more about the hepatitis B tested field. It will give you the choices that you have for that field as well as the definition and the source where that definition comes from. So this is a really helpful tool if you just want to know more about what they're asking for on the birth record. And then lastly, there's an area under the Help Desk section where you can see your security users' contact information. The security users can also help reset your password, or they're responsible for setting up new users. So it's important to know sometimes who is the security user at your facility. But if you ever have any questions about that, you can also contact me at perrydata.net support. So I guess if anyone has any questions about the birth record, we could do that now. Otherwise, Lisa can begin talking about the standard reports. So I'll switch it over to Lisa.
Hold on.
Kyle, can you unmute me?
Yes, there you go.
I'm unmuted. Okay. I wanted to show you a couple of things as we get into doing the actual standard reports. What I'm going to show you is some people work off of Internet Explorer and others work off of either Google Chrome, Firefox, or something else. And the reason I'm showing you things on Internet Explorer, besides that's what I'm most familiar with, is it has a couple of quirks, if you will, that people sometimes have issues with, so I wanted to show you that. So like Jordy showed, we have a couple of different hospitals that I have access to. So I'll go into Ancilla. And if I'm in here, and then I want to go into the standard reports server, because that's where I'm going to go to do my reports, when I bring that up, in Pentaho, it's up and down here, and we need to have it sideways. We go up here in the top right, there's a compatibility view. And when I do that, it brings it out this way, which is what we like, what will show it best for Pentaho. However, if I'm going back here, of course, now is it going to do it for me? When I go to do a record, I get this invalid character name. If you see that come up, you click that off, and then you go hit compatibility mode, and you will see this sort of jump. So that's what you have to do. If you get that error message, go up here and do the compatibility mode. And then again, when you go into standard reports server, if you have this Internet Explorer, you want to change it to compatibility mode. Now when I'm in here, I'm going to put in my password, and again, case sensitive. And the other important thing here is most of us are very, very quick and want to hit enter. Sometimes hitting enter works okay, but the best and safest way is to go into log in. That should more readily get you where you need to be. And this can take a few minutes. I do believe on Internet Explorer it goes a little more slowly than on some of the other ones. And when we get in here, we want to go into Browse Files. You can either get it there or on the home. I have a couple of other things in here because I was testing some stuff too, but in general, go into Browse Files. And then in the public thing, there will be standard reports. When you open that up, you see a whole bunch of reports here, and we can further open it down below. So in general, much of our summary type information is on here where, like it says summary. So things like checkpoint, demographic, and so forth are going to be in PDF files. Logs and so on are patient-based information, and we'll go through some of those in a picture on the PowerPoint in a minute. When you go to open these, I just want to go through a couple things with that. Let's say maternal risk factor summary. I tend to go into the open new window thing, and what it'll do is bring up the screen that's going to let me put in who I want. In this case, I can just go to one hospital at a time. That's how these reports have been set up before, so they're still like that. However, I could go by all attendants or just a particular one. I want to put in the date that I want to go in, and with each one of these, you want to let it flash like that to make sure it took what you wanted. You can also, if you want to go in and find a date this way, you may do so as well. Then you hit View Report, and it should go darker or in some other way let you know it's working. And when it's done processing, it will bring this up. This happens to be a 2-page report, and it's got some great information on various risk factors based on delivery type, stillbirth, and so on. Again, depending what you want to do with this, whether you want to print a copy, save a copy, that type of thing, you're able to do that whichever way you care to do it. When we go over into the standard reports themselves, this stuff gives us some more detailed information over on this side. For example, we often use that delivery summary, and I can get at that a number of different ways. Let's try delivery summary for all of our OB providers. I'll open it like I did before, but in this case, all of these are open. So if I wanted to, I could hit the control button and click on all of these other hospitals if I wanted to get it for everybody. I'm just going to go back to Ancilla. I'll run the same date range as I had before. I also do have an extra filter here if I only wanted live births or whatever. Click on that, and again, I get another report. Now this one's longer, and on page 1 it tells me the summary information. This person had 4 deliveries. The next page tells me that this is the clinic. I move on. Somebody else had 5 deliveries, must have had a set of twins in there. And this was doctor. So that's how that type of a thing works. So those are all PDF type things. And then I wanted to quickly show you if you're in on records that have more patient-specific data. So if we went, for example, to checkpoint review, we've got all these different things like we did before. They're each separated out now. If you go into this all tabs, it'll bring it up, but it bounces information down further, so you're probably better off going by each thing by itself. I'm going to go just check out these babies here, full-term neonate composite. I'll go with the same thing. Now this is going to work a little bit differently. This is going after an Excel file. So on this one it opens here. Sometimes depending on your thing it might be down here, but wherever it is, open it up. Now this is a quirk I found. Again, I think it's because it's Internet Explorer. Sometimes you're like, where did it go? Somewhere on here you might have to close some things down. You want to get rid of the security because it does it twice. But then it will bring up your data, and you can go ahead and save that or do whatever you normally do with this type of a file. We're going to go, we have a couple printouts of things on the slides coming up, but you'll see again how, ooh, I've got a couple of incompletes here. And if I go over here, this is showing me what's showing up presently as the numerator and denominator, and I can see where the data fields were for this particular checkpoint measure. So those are still available, and that is how you get to them. When I want to get out of here again, I would then close, log out, and I can head back to here. But, oh, I got that darn error again. So I go to compatibility mode. So that's how we maneuver around there. Now for the rest of this, I'm going to change the presenter so that you can see the rest of the slides here as I talk some more. So as I was mentioning, how to get data out. Many of the reports that are used regularly have that pre-made format. So anything in there that we were looking at today and that we're covering today are things that you can get out without having to do much manipulation other than which facility do I have, what kind of dates do I want, and that type of a thing. Again, there are summaries with calculated stats or patient level, and as you saw when you get into that drop-down part of standard reports, you can do more multiple facility things. You can sort out by what the primary care person was doing and by attendant. And also, we've added those two things into the those Excel spreadsheets. So that was an added feature that we have. Next slide, please. This is just a reminder of what I was just kind of showing. The summaries, again, contain calculated statistics, and they're kind of running up and down the middle there. And then anything else that doesn't say summary is some type of patient-level data. So the next slide shows an example of a different kind of patient-level data. One of the things on there is that delivery log report. Again, all these we have had in the past, but it's a good refresher of what specific information is in there. This kind of mimics a log that you'd use in labor and delivery, so it gives you good information of which births happened when, what the basic outcomes were, and who the physician and nurse and that type of a thing was. So again, you can run that for any type of dates that you're wanting. Next slide. This is a useful piece of information. It's a demographic summary. So it'll show you for your date range some great information, particularly about the general population that you have. Age, race, ethnicity, where their residence, education, what types of services they used, and any of the paternity acknowledgments and so forth. So that can be very helpful that way. Another report that we have is actually a two-pager. So if you can go to the next slide, please. It's a disparities report. So this is actually 2 pages worth of information. On the top there, it shows how many births you had and how many deliveries. And then left and right is a count and a percentage for, based on racial breakdown, a variety of risk factors that women can have, and then for your organization or for your organization, what types of percentages and so forth you have. So we've got a lot of antenatal risk factors and some intrapartum and labor risk factors, and then on the next page it continues on with some stuff about deliveries. Some of this mimics parts of the delivery summary, but it shows what kind of breakdowns you have a little bit differently. There's also then the births, deaths, broken down by various gestational ages, weights, admissions, and feeding types, and then it ends with postpartum complications. So that can be a very useful piece of information that you can get kind of on the fly for people that are wanting that type of data. The next slide, please. This is another 2-pager. It's a newborn summary that's available out there, and this is all by number of babies. So it has multiples. It has whether they were a live birth or a death, and then again it's also breaking it down by weeks gestation and so forth. And on the second page we have it by birth weight in grams, and then there's also some information about what the APGARs were, the 5 and 10-minute ones. The admissions were what nursery they wound up going into, whether they were transferred out, and then it does have some breastfeeding information on there as well. So that can be very useful to you that way. That's a few examples of what those reports are. Certainly not all of them, but it gets you a good flavor. So I would encourage you to become familiar with all the reports on there, because it does contain great information, again, that you can get at very readily and often satisfies a lot of the needs that administrative people and others who are making some decisions want to get at. A little more detail then on the standard reports folders that have more what I call sliced up information. Again, I showed you briefly where if you open up that standard reports thing, you get things that you can see by multiple sites, by either the OB provider or attendant, and then for some of the publicly reported data, stuff that's at the patient level. So again, if I have 3 outliers on something, I can go look specifically at those 3 to figure out what was going on with them. So that can be very useful. One example of this, if you can go to the next slide, is the CMS measures summary. What this does is, for the couple that we've had on there to date, it's the early elective delivery and the antenatal steroids. And what this is doing is breaking it down, numerator and denominator, as well as where did the exclusions come. And another important thing I think on this particular report is it says records with all delivery fields entered. And right now, only 73.68% have been entered. So that tells me that no wonder it can't figure out anything yet, because we don't have all the records in for the time frame that I'm looking for. So I'd want to go back in there and determine which records were still outstanding. So once this comes up as 100%, then I can start looking at, okay, here's my numerator and denominator, and if I've got anyone sitting up here in the numerator, I'm sure I'll want to go investigate that further to make sure, is that really accurate or is it not? So within your own organizations too, you're going to have to determine when do you feel that the data is cleaned up enough in order to be able to say that this is true and correct. You're internally probably going to be working with people as far as what's going on with coding and that type of thing to make sure you kind of get this stuff trued up. So that's one of the more common measures that gets into there. And if we can go to the next slide, I think I've got another example. Another thing, the delivery and birth summary, this is sort of what I showed you before. This looks like it's broken down by OB provider. You can see, again, there's about 10 pages on here. So again, this was the person that had a set of twins. So on this page, it shows all of the data. This person has, what do they have here? 60% vaginal and 20% cesarean rate at present, and so on and so forth. And then on, we don't have it on the next page, but if there were the next page, it would say which physician or provider this was. But again, it gives my delivery summary in a number of different ways. I can run it for my report. I can, for the whole, I can run it by providers. And this one I can run by a number of facilities as well. Okay, if you can go to the next slide, please. This is an example of going into the quality indicators summary. Again, it looked very similar to what I showed you before. There's the overall summary for whoever you're putting in, or broken down by attendance, by each of your facilities, and by the OB providers. A couple things with the quality report, if we could go to the next page, please. This is a 2-pager, and right now the first page has what we had currently had on it. So it actually has the, for example, the elective delivery rate using the information that we had up until the end of 2014. In 2015, the measures for Joint Commission changed slightly, and so we see some of that then on the next page. What we've been doing here is putting in things that are sort of in progress that we're working on building, and making sure that they're seeming to come out correctly on the second page. So when it's listed as 2015, that's when the new measure starts. So fairly shortly, these things that are going either out to Checkpoint or CMS will get moved on to other reports. But this is where you can find this now to kind of do your validation, if you will, on this information. I will point out, too, that this bottom one on exclusive breast milk feeding parental choice, I realize that Joint Commission talked about having PC05A not be on anymore, but we will be including this in here because as a hospital quality measure, that is something that I know some facilities will for sure be interested in, because are we, based on what mom is wanting to do, how well are we doing at providing her with what she was wanting to do? So that will be staying on this, this report for sure. Okay, if we move on to the next thing, checkpoint review. I had mentioned that a little bit when I showed you on the live thing. This has a lot of different separate things. What we do have you going in and out for each thing by putting in the date for any one of these that you want to get at. The very bottom one, which is kind of cut off on this slide, would be where it's all together. But because of the way Pentaho works, it's a little messy that way, so it's usually best to just go in on this by the particular one you're looking at. And again, if I were to pull something out, let's say we're going to look at number 9 here, checkpoint review for cesarean birth. If we go to the next, this is a sample of what that looks like when it's pulled out. Again, I truncated some of the parts of it so it would fit on here. But here again is where you begin to pull out who fell into the numerator and who fell into the denominator. So for example, your internal quality people may be saying, hey, who are the people who have these higher rates of NTSB cesarean sections? And you can look and say, okay, for this particular time frame that we're looking at, it was Joseph Doctor that had the outlier. So we might check on that, and we might find out whether this person very often has this happen, or if that's an aberration or whatnot. So we've got all kinds of information, medical record number, etc., that we can go back if we need to look at an individual record to go determine what's going on with that case. So again, these reports can be very, very useful in doing your internal quality checking for what you're looking for. I know that I send this information into our peer review group on a regular basis so that they can take a look at where we may or may not have issues. A sub piece of this, which is not, I think it's 1 or 2 after this, talks about NTSB C-sections without a trial of labor. Not all of those are bad, but it's something that some quality people want to take a look at to see, okay, if they didn't have a trial of labor, was it reasonable, i.e. they had a placenta previous, so you weren't going to do a trial of labor on that person. So that type of report is very helpful as well. Okay, next slide, please. Another couple things about the early elective deliveries. Again, this mimics what we have had in the past. These are the 4 main fields that we have. Again, you could go into that early elective delivery all tabs, but you have to be kind of careful in that sometimes it looks like there's rows that have nothing on them, and you have to go down a way in order to get to all of this stuff. But it's an easy way if you just want to know how many records were complete or not, where do we have some missing fields. I've used that sometimes when I want to know for this specific thing, where are we missing information. And then that number 4 there, elective deliveries, that's what does have who's coming up on the numerator, denominator, or falls out completely, and then what the provider names are as well. So if you could go to the next slide. Again, this brought it out as a an Excel that you can then go do with as you feel is proper for your place. But again, we all have added on the OB provider and the attendant. For example, I know within our facilities we have a lot of clinic patients, so oftentimes you see on this thing there's a couple people that say clinic/hospital. Oftentimes we run our data based off of that so that we can separate out what came through the clinic versus what was by a particular attendant. And a lot of times, especially on an elective delivery, it's the initial provider that was making that decision regardless of who happened to be there at the birth. So you've got information on this. As I mentioned before, you can see pretty readily where I've got some incomplete stuff. So, okay, is that because we had boo-boos here that should have been removed from the record? Or is it something that's needing to be filled in? And then further to the right, we can't see it on this particular one, but that's where we would get the colored in of who's in the numerator and who's in the denominator. So I think, let's see, after this I think we have a few more key pearls. Okay, quick tips. As Jordy had pointed out earlier, if you receive an error message while navigating the birth record you can't see, make sure, like I showed you before, that your compatibility mode is on for Peridata and off in Pentaho. Again, when you're logging in to get to the Pentaho stuff, try not to hit enter, try to hit that login, because if it's not taking it, it probably means you hit enter by mistake, so then go back and hit login. And as she showed you earlier, if you forgot your password, click on that link and get your username or email address in there and they can get something back to you. Jordy tells me that that's where a lot of the help desk calls come from. And then, let's see, I think we can open it up for other questions or concerns. And if we can also have Jordy back on. I'm trying to remember, Jordy, did you talk about removing a record?
Hello?
Oh, yeah, Jordy,
did
you talk about removing a record?
I did not, so I can go over that.
Maybe we better remind people about that, because
yeah,
that can be fraught with issues.
Yes.
Jordy, should I turn the screen over to you so that you can demonstrate that?
Do that quick. So, all right. On this, we'll go back to the search results screen where most of those actions are for editing and viewing in the dashboard. And there's one other button under actions, and that is remove. So you might want to remove a record if you had created a duplicate record on accident. But this button, you have to be absolutely sure that the record that you're going to remove is the one that you want to remove, because I'll show you now. It's really easy to accidentally click remove, and once you do that, it's just gone, and it'll be gone from the peridata.net site. So if you can avoid it, instead of removing a record, try and edit a bad record before removing it.
So, for example, if I was starting to create a new birth record, and I usually start with maybe the medical record number, and doggone it all, I typed in the encounter number instead. It's better to, like she said, go back and edit that number to turn it into the medical record number and then continue over to your other numbers rather than just leaving it sitting out there floating around.
Exactly.
Because otherwise you have incomplete stuff, and it does start, depending how far you got, it does start messing up your counts in your data. And that is a quality check that we try to do before we send out our reports to try to make sure we don't have any hangers on that are there, but watch out. And then, Jordy, can you also go into, it seems to happen more to me in dashboard, but it can happen either which way. I'm a very visual person, and this is in alphabetical order, but my eye goes so fast between remove to view that I have accidentally hit that one thinking I'm doing review. So I'm just bringing that up as another point of sort of interest, because I honestly thought I was going to review something, and I've toasted a record, and then these guys have to go back and do a bunch of stuff to try to get it back. So really, really be careful on that remove button. And if we ever could get a way to have it have a much bigger hard stop, that would probably be very helpful.
Yeah. Definitely.
But that's the information that we wanted to cover today, I think, on the basics of how to get records in, how to maneuver around the system, and then how to get the basic data back out of there, and what some of the uses for some of the data are. So if we do have any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them at this time. And otherwise, we could probably change the presenter back to Kyle so he can show that slide for getting contact information. As ever, if you have technical issues or support, it's best to get a hold of Ancilla Ancilla, to have those types of questions answered through the help desk. General content or data questions could be directed to me, Lisa Locken, and that's more as it relates to bigger data committee information about maybe should we have a new field in there or not, and those types of things. I think Jordy did also point out that data dictionary, which can be very helpful if you have general questions about what does a particular field mean. And Kyle, I think I'll send it back to you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any questions right now. If people do have questions, please feel free to raise your hand or type them in the question box on your control panel. Otherwise, please feel free to send them to WAPC, and we will forward them to the appropriate speaker to get you an answer. We are offering continuing education credit for attending this webinar. We will send an email with the information for SurveyMonkey evaluation form. When you complete that and return it, we will send you the certificate by email. This webinar will also it's been recorded and will be put on the WAPC website, and we will notify you when that is available for that. We encourage you to consider becoming a member of WAPC. You can join online by clicking on the address that you see on your screen, not on your screen right now, but you would be able to do that. And then finally, the annual conference will be held April 24th to 26th, 2016 at the Osthoff Resort in beautiful Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin.
And I do see a question now, which is probably more of a Jordy thing.
Okay.
Can you go over vital records updates and vital records updates needing review?
The vital records updates. Can everyone hear me? So I don't know if it's helpful to see the screen. Maybe not. So vital records updates would be those updates made on the SIVERIS end coming through to the Perry data record. And the vital records updates needing review would be those changes that have been made to the SIVERIS record that are not matching the Perry data record. So if something has been changed on the SIVERIS end and it's not matching, you'll be able to click on VR updates needing review, and you can then see which fields are not matching, and you'll be able to either accept that information coming in from vital records as, yes, that information is correct, and I would like it on the birth record on PeriData, or reject it, that information is not correct and you do not want it to be changed on the PeriData record. Is there anything else you want to add to that, Lisa?
No, I think that's, and I think different places have had different processes for handling that. So part of it is check with your area there. I think it also depends a little bit to some extent on which order you're doing things in as to how maybe either dependent or concerned you are about what's coming back and forth. So check with your facility. For example, maybe the Vital Records did do an edit that they thought didn't make sense, and you guys happen to know from your record that, in fact, what you had in PeriData is what you want to keep in there. So in that case, you'd adjust accordingly. The only other comment that I have seen in here is, again, if there would be a way that we could work on trying to get some kind of a hard stop thingy on that remove, it would be helpful, because that is a concern people have of accidentally doing something to records. Otherwise, I'm not seeing any other.
Lisa, I see one more comment. Do you see that on your screen? Severus, Severus is the incoming, and accepting would be updating PeriData.
Right. Yeah, so I think that's what I was trying to do. So if I accept it, I'm changing something I had in PeriData to what Severus said. So if that's in agreement, that's what you would take in.
Okay. I don't see any hands raised, and I don't see any other questions coming across. Again, please feel free to contact us if you have other questions. We thank you for your time this morning and wish you a good rest of the day. Thank you to our speakers, our presenters, for the wonderful job they've done of going over peridata.net. And with that, we will conclude this presentation.